Catch us on Channel 5.
Good evening. Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education meeting for March 7th. Can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blanks?
Here.
Ms. Exum?
Here.
Dr. Greenberg?
Here.
Dr. Overmeyer Velasquez?
Here.
Mr. Paul Uke?
Here.
Mr. Sarzan?
Here.
Mr. Zadanowitz?
Here.
Student Representatives Hugo Barrione
Here.
and Sarah Berman.
Here.
Hugo? Hugo, can you please lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no revision to the agenda order and no student participation. Let me start by welcoming all of you tonight. This is our usual crowd. Something
A little low, Barker. We're a
Something
little
must
low.
be happening tonight. We're looking forward. Please understand, and we'll get into the details shortly, that this is just the opening presentation of the budget for the year. And then we will, as I'll announce, have subsequent opportunities and dates for input, and we, as a board, will have several workshops, and including a public meeting in a different location. Anyway, I'll make sure that all of that is announced. All this, of course, will be on our website. But before we get too into that, let's move to public communications. Would anyone like to address the board? No, anybody on the sign-up sheet? No, there'll be an opportunity at the end of the meeting to do so as well, and of course, many more opportunities in the weeks ahead. No unfinished business. May I have a motion to receive the superintendent's recommended 2017-18 education budget and begin the process of reviewing and modifying for final approval and adoption as the Board of Education budget at the April 4, 2017 Board of Education meeting?
So moved.
Second? Superintendent Moore, over to you for discussion and presentation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I would point out that tonight March is Board Appreciation Month. How ironic. That's exactly right. But as we go through the budget process, and I want to thank everybody that came out tonight, it shows what's great about West Hartford. So many administrators, so many teachers, so many engaged citizenry. And I do want to point out that the members of the Board of Education spend their time throughout the year, and this is not a paid position, this is an elected position, and it involves many, many hours and much commitment. And over the coming weeks, I will be talking back and forth with them continuously. They'll be spending night after night out, and I just want to thank them, as I do representing as a West Hartford parent, as a West Hartford citizen. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your commitment to West Hartford Public Schools. So, now the budget, once we lower the... Yeah, that's to block things.
To block the tomatoes.
This budget process began almost as soon as last year's budget ended, in that we've known for quite a while, and as we discussed last summer, and as we worked through the fall, we understood that this was going to be a difficult budget year. This would be a difficult budget year on the school side, whether or not the state had the crisis that the state does have. When we add the compounding factors of the state, we're at a very difficult point. And the debate over the next 7 weeks, I think, is really important for us to decide who we are. I also want to thank, before I begin anything, my staff, my principals. I've made it to about half the schools. I've tried to go out and talk to each of the staffs because I don't want them to see things tonight that they've never heard of before, and I'll be continuing to meet with school staffs over the coming weeks. I also want to thank our principals who have come together and given input, administrators who have done the same, and I want to give a special thanks to the members of my executive team, Gretchen, Paul, Rosina, Andy, and Rick, who twice a week for hours on end over the past few weeks have been going over almost everything imaginable and trying to think of new ways and new savings to do business. And then lastly, I also, often I say this is in many ways his budget, but I don't think he's taking credit, but he should. This is the superintendent's budget. Chip and I work together. I see Chip more this time of year, especially this year, than I see members of my family, and that is not a joke. And to be able to text somebody at 3 a.m. when you wake up and have something, and then at 7 a.m. he has a response. When you think of things, bounce ideas off of each other, to not just have somebody who knows every single number, but has a history in the legislature, in politics, in budgets, and a command for doing what's right, that knows no bounds. I'm proud to have him on staff, and he's irreplaceable, really. So thank you to Chip Ward for all your work with this. Now, let's get to the budget. But first, we have to talk about who we are. When we talk about what we spend, we need to know who we are. We're almost 9,700 students. We've seen these numbers before, but these numbers should never get lost in what we are, in what we provide, because there's no one like us. West Hartford represents much of the state's demographic makeup and really the nation. I say oftentimes one of the reasons I feel so passionate about this district is if we prove that West Hartford can do things the right way, then there's no question the state and the nation can do things the right way, because we are the same. 73 different home languages spoken by our kids. And you think about what that means for our teachers and our people in our building and communication trying to reach out. When 1 in 5 of our students has a home where English isn't the first home language, or another language is spoken at home, which, think of the richness that provides to the other kids in their classrooms, with students from all over the world. A true cosmopolitan learning environment for our kids, for my kids, from all different backgrounds, from all different levels of wealth, poverty, and different needs. And then this chart sometimes gets lost, but I think it's really important to look at historical perspective and where we are versus where we were in per pupil expenditures. We're 128th out of 169 towns. That makes me immensely proud in what you all deliver as teachers and administrators to my kids and to our kids when you think about where we are. No one looks like us. I put that slide up before. I just got a notification from the College Board the other day. We have the third most in West Hartford successful completions of an advanced placement course. Not taking multiple courses, not just one course successfully completed. The 2 districts ahead of us in the state of Connecticut in terms of not numbers, just percentages of students that have successfully completed the course are Wilton and Weston. They don't look like that, okay? Now, I also think it's important when we look at historical trends to realize that 40 years ago we were number one in the state in education spending. There is a legacy established by our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents about West Hartford, what West Hartford demands. Now those numbers have fallen over time, but the demands haven't. But really, this becomes the question of what do we expect from our schools? What are we willing to give to have these schools? But it's also important to look at what we spend and what that realistically means. Because there will be those that question, are we spending efficiently? Where else can we cut? And I understand that. This is a difficult budget. I've made cuts to it myself. But I also want to think about the net current expenditures per pupil, the per pupil average. In West Hartford, we spend $15,022 per person. Each child, that's what we invest in their education. If we look at the state average, and we look at what the state average spending is per pupil, we would need $12.4 million more dollars this year to spend per student what the state feels is appropriate per student as an average. The district we're compared to, rightfully in some cases, but when we talk about test scores at this table, we compared to DIRG B, DIRG Reference Group B. It's an old designation, we know that. Who are we comparing ourselves to? This is the Farmingtons, the Simsburys, the Avons, the Greenwich, South Windsor, Glastonbury. They spend $16,467 per student. That's $14.6 million more than West Hartford spends in our education budget. So, to put it another way, in the past 5 years, we've saved $60 million over what we have spent if we had matched DIRG B or the state average. That's $60 million over the past 5 years less than those districts have spent on a per pupil basis. And some would say, well, that's because of your size. You get the benefits of scale. You're in the top 10 population-wise districts in the state. Okay, let's look at it that way then. The average of the top 10 largest districts is $16,255 per student. That would be $12.5 million more than what we've spent. There is no question that what we provide, what these people provide, is the best bang for your buck you will find in the state of Connecticut, and I would say in the country. So what does that mean now? What does that mean for the budget? Now we get into the numbers. And let's talk about the roll forward budget. The roll forward budget is what we would do, what we would need to spend to do the exact same thing next year with the exact same number of people as we do this year, taking into account things like increased costs, inflation. This is roll forward. We would need $9.29 million more, or a little over a 6% increase. This would be a tough budget year no matter what. If the state troubles didn't exist, we've known this would be a difficult budget year. What's driving this? They're the standard things, because, by the way, none of this is a choice. We're not adding a program to get here. This is just to do things the exact same way. The major driver out of our control is medical expenses. If you take a look at last year, through January 16th, we had $4 million in catastrophic claims. That's claims for an individual where it costs more than $50,000 in treatment for that individual. This year, we're at $9.7 million in that same time frame. We have a lot more people that got really sick this year. This could be cancer. This could be neonatal care. This could be transplants. And it's always a difficult thing to talk about because these are people we care about, and I certainly don't want an employee who's going through a hard time to watch this and feel like the budget's their fault, because it's not. This is a guarantee that we provide them, and we want them to get better, and we want them to have excellent care. We hope next year's catastrophic claims aren't as large as this year, but we don't know, and we have to smooth out that cost. So just in medical costs, we're talking about a 17.5% increase over this year's budget. Then you take this the second year of a teacher's contract. This year we have more teachers than we did last year and more teachers than we budgeted for, chiefly because of some high-need students that have come in and have needed more support. The average wage increase is about 3.5% due to high step costs that the teachers will cost. And what that means is the raise that was negotiated, it was a very good contract, it's not a high raise. We have a lot of teachers that are at the earlier stages of their career. So their increases are what drive that. But that's not a unique number compared district to district at all. As a matter of fact, it's lower than most districts based on the last increase. Other costs, pension costs, these are the non-certified staff's pensions, teachers' pensions, as everybody basically learned in the past 3 weeks, are paid for by the state separately. The pension expenses set by the town. Transportation increases. This is normal inflation in transportation costs as part of a negotiated contract with our busing companies, plus increased costs for the number of students that are placed out of district. Tuition increases, again, mostly driven by out-of-district placements of students with high needs. Then all other increases, basically, we're talking about inflation. These are utilities, things like that. Budget increase needed, about $9.3 million or 6% budget. So that would be if we just roll forward the budget. Now we look at the governor's budget and the proposed state budget. And this is a caveat in that I have a lot of people that are telling me, well, you know the governor's budget is dead on arrival. That's not going to be what passes. Well, the difficulty for the Board of Education and town council members, who I see some here, is we don't know what the budget will be. And so realistically, we're throwing darts at a dartboard with a blindfold on, not sure where the dartboard is. And that makes it very difficult. But I don't want anybody to believe the state budget is going to shift around and we're going to be getting money next year. I just don't see that happening. The state has a significant budget problem. And the big warning is it could get worse over the coming months. It could. And we don't know when the budget will be passed. So one of the key elements that the governor used as a lever to save $400 million in the state budget to try to balance it in his proposal is by taking teacher pension costs and putting some of those costs onto the town. So the state pension costs are $1.2 billion. A third of that, $400 million, was put on the communities, local communities, to pay on the Board of Education budget. And this in West Hartford, our share would be $8.01 million put on top of the budget. Not something we particularly had a say in. And this is something that I think overall was unexpected. But it certainly has an impact on our budget. Then changes in special education funding. We see this as a reduction. It's a reduction in our budget, and this is on the board budget. And there's two levers here, the board budget and the town budget. So we used to get what the special education funding was known as the excess cost grant. We got about $4 million there. The governor eliminated that, but then added a new special education grant that went to the boards of education. That one was about $6 million. So in short, it's a plus $2.2 million to the Board of Education. Before you celebrate, however, we come to the impact on the town, because that special education grant came out of ECS, educational cost sharing. And the only reason I don't reflect it in the Board of Education budget is we've never put ECS in the Board of Education budget. That always resides in the town budget. But we have to keep in mind that there's a $5.93 million reduction compared to the adopted budget. Okay, and we're just going adopted budget to adopted budget. There is more money in there, and that was granted later, but we're comparing budget to budget. So that's actually a $5.93 million reduction that the town has to think about, and that adds to the taxpayer's burden. But to shift back to the budget increase needed, just on the Board of Education side, we're talking about $5.81 million or a 3.79% budget increase. So when you combine the two, we're at about a 10% budget increase. I am understanding of realities and what numbers are tenable. And so we looked at this year's budget proposal and talked about what shifts can we make that I can recommend to you as superintendent, that none of these are easy, but I don't believe they will have a definitive impact on West Hartford students next year. There will be changes with these, but this impact is tried to be removed away from individual children. Enrollment needs. We have declining enrollment at the elementary schools. We know we've gone through this every year. So at the elementary, this would put us a decline of 6 FTEs. Every FTE is a person. And when it's a teaching position, when you see 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3, it's not like half a person, but it could be a part-time person, somebody 1 day a week, or how they work depending on the number of periods. So at the elementary school, if this were a typical budget, I would only go down 4 FTEs. Every year, as you know, we get requests for class breaks. This holds pretty strictly to current class size guidelines, which is 23 and 27. Middle school, tightening schedule there, eliminate another FTE, and at high school, down about 2.2 more FTEs. Again, tightening schedules. And then overall, more tightenings. Art and World Language elementary specials in terms of at the elementary schools, scheduled more strictly in terms of this number of prep periods completely for everybody, even with movements kind of less floating. Same goes for elementary Quest staff tightening. World Language middle school tightening. Currently, World Language is a class where students are pulled out of, and it's maintained itself on the team structure. This would take World Language off teams and would make World Language class sizes the same size as math, English, social studies classes. Substance abuse coordinator position would be eliminated. That was a position that was originally created under the DARE grant that we adopted over time. This is something that would obviously inevitably fall to our social workers, our counselors, assistant principals. Principal Support and Leadership Academy. We've had a leadership academy in place that you've all supported. This has been one of the great programs in West Hartford where we take teacher leaders and give them training, not just to be future administrators, which is great, and many of our principals sitting in this audience came through this program, but also to be leaders in their building and learn what leadership means in West Hartford. It's a unique program. It's great. It's paid great dividends. But at this time, that and the principal support that goes with that, and principal support that, has gone to buildings where we've had large numbers of non-tenure reviews with the changes that were made to teacher evaluation, that goes away also. There are vacant positions, 2 vacant positions, one in IT and one in maintenance, that we were posting for. We pulled those postings and won't fill those 2 positions. Then robotics, and this is something that you've seen the presentation. One of the coolest things I've ever seen, the robots working with children. That program is something we contract out for. It's something that we're removing from this budget in the cost. So those 2 add up to about $1.35 million. School and department supplies, reducing budgets by 8.4% from 16-17 levels. Basically, we're going back to 5 years ago funding levels for all departments, for our curriculum department, for our schools, for IT. It's a $700,000 cut. It's not something I would typically recommend, I promise you that. This does mean we're not buying textbooks in that same number. We're not buying computers in that same number. And our schools, each school takes a cut to its supplies budget. But that is removed from our day-to-day operations. Then pay to play. Coaches prefer it to be pay to participate, and I understand why. Increase that from $150 per sport per season to $200 per student per season, with a cap on each family of 4 sports, $800. Obviously, free and reduced lunch is considered. Students are turned away from a sport if their family can't afford this. I doubt there's a superintendent around that's more opposed to pay for play than me, and I've raised it dramatically over the past 2 years. And that's partially because having children involved in sports, I understand what youth sports cost. I understand what camps cost. I understand what competitive leagues cost once kids are in middle school and high school. So this cost, I feel, is something that our parents can bear, and it raises another $100,000, which puts our pay for play. We raise about $440,000 a year for athletics through our pay for play. So these shifts end up leading to $2.16 million in savings, or knocking 1.4% off the proposed budget. So when you take it together, we currently have a $153 million budget. Take the roll forward, subtract the changes, add the impact of the governor's budget. We're looking at a $166.22 million budget, or an 8.44% increase. If we go back and look at what the budget would be if there were no increases from the state or anything else, I'd be proposing a 4.6% budget increase at this point. I know that this is a large budget number to ask for. I know when I interviewed the questions that were asked for this position. I've thought a lot about those interviews lately. And how are we going to maintain West Hartford's reputation? How are we going to build the reputation statewide, nationwide? What am I going to do to make West Hartford more welcoming to all of our students, to all of our families? This is the number that does that. This is the number that maintains our public schools in the same way. Because what we get to next is a list of possible reductions that I'm going to group in 4 areas. And those reductions, there's sheets provided for everybody. And I do want to point out that everything in this budget is available online. There is nothing that you don't see that we see. And I also want to point out that a letter will go out to all staff and families tonight from me detailing much of this presentation, and also when meetings are that are coming up and opportunities to speak about this budget. So I do want to take a moment to talk about our board kind of purview and what happens next. We have a meeting scheduled, a budget workshop on the 15th. That budget workshop will be about this budget. Those changes, those recommendations, we will go through line by line this budget as we do every year, talk about where spending is and what the superintendent's proposed budget is. March 21st is a regularly scheduled board meeting, which will become a workshop. That workshop, at that point, is where we'll talk about the next slides, which are additional reductions. So people have the opportunity at those nights. There is public comment because it's a regular meeting will occur, and then the workshop. And then we can talk about each one of these in detail, because to go through any list and try to give them their due doesn't make sense in this setting without explanations from my team and others, and to be able to answer your questions, because they'll naturally bring up questions. Additional reductions. So, total impact on the taxpayers of West Hartford is $18.87 million. I understand that that's difficult for the taxpayers and the people of West Hartford to bear. My head is not in the sand about what is appropriate. I just don't know what the answer is to what that 8.87 is going to be. I know what it is now. But I've prepared, with members of my team, additional reductions for the board and the community to consider. And before I get into them, they're over there, and this packet's in all of your board books, because I'm not going to go into specifics on them here. But one thing I do want you to remember, and I want the community to remember as we discuss this, everything in here is a person. Everything in here is a person, a teacher, a support staff who works to make our schools better. I've spent, as I said, the past couple weeks meeting with them, talking to them. Their commitment to our kids, to our town, is inspiring to me. And I want them to know that, and I want the community to know especially, nothing that's talked about, nothing that goes forward is a reflection of who we have working for us. Because these people are tremendous. And our non-tenured teachers, who naturally have the highest levels of anxiety and fear, I go to every school and do non-tenure reviews with each principal, going through every single non-tenured teacher. And God, we've got some unbelievable young talent here that are doing tremendous things, changing the way we look at things. And I want to thank them, and I know you don't take any of these lightly, and I don't want anybody in the community to, because these are great people that are in these pages, not numbers. So, additional reductions for the board to consider. You have guidelines that say class size will be 23 and 27 at the elementary schools. This increases elementary guidelines by 2 to 25 and 29. Increase class sizes in the middle school by 3 students per class, removing teams in grades 7 and 8. You basically move away from a middle school structure in grades 7 and 8 and become a junior high school structure. It leads to more efficient scheduling, if you want to call it efficient, but it does remove that team structure that we have in place. Increasing high school class size by 2.2. That may not sound like much to people, but what 2.2 means is we're talking about you'll have classes of 29, 30, because you'll always have a wide variety. It's not like in high schools you can just set every class at 24.5. Because if 40 kids sign up for physics, you're having 2 sections of 20. Which means that when you have 300 kids signed up for American government, instead of doing 15 sections of 20, maybe you're doing 10 sections of 30 to balance off, because it's all just it's just math of how these match up. And so you'd have, this would certainly have an impact. Reducing supports for students, fewer special education teachers, fewer ESOL teachers, fewer reading teachers, and fewer school counselors at both the middle school and high school. Reducing program offerings, the elimination of Quest, return to half-day K at 6 of our elementary schools. Those are the non-Title I schools. Easy way to remember them. It's not Charter Oak and Smith or the W's. It's the others. Librarian positions eliminated at the elementary schools. Library is no longer a curricular position. Instead, a clerk works in the library, checks out books, organized that way. World language at the elementary schools is eliminated. Unified arts offerings at the middle schools are eliminated. What this does is takes unified arts right now, every student has 2 classes in their rotation. These are tech ed, art, music, PE, health, and it takes it from 2 down to 1. So a student might still have choir or orchestra or band if they're signed up for that, they wouldn't have a standard music class with that, okay? Art offerings would be cut also. Then ASK program, not a particularly large program, but a program that is important at Hall High School, would also be eliminated. In addition to that, reductions in administrative support, fewer department supervisors. As you know, we have townwide supervisors and we have department supervisors for our academic areas. who do tremendous work in leading, not just in curricular work, but in staff development on Wednesdays. And this would take it from 2 positions to 1 position. And then we'd see fewer clerical, maintenance, and custodial staff across the district. So, in these additional budget reductions, and I want to be clear, and they're not recommendations. They're possible reductions for you to consider. I want to assure people that this Board of Education has always supported West Hartford Public Schools. They've supported what we do. And now it's up to the democratic process. This isn't an autocratic regime where I get to decide cuts, where I get to decide what we're going to do. This is now about elected representatives on the school side and on the town council, because the town council is where they deal with revenue. We don't. I acknowledge to anybody, all I do is spend money. They've got to make it. That's another pressure that they have. But it's up to the people to talk about and decide who we are. I'd use just one quote. Bernice Johnson Reagan, a member of the Civil Rights Movement, who was one of the freedom singers from the Student Nonviolence Coordination Committee, and then became the curator of music history at the National Museum of American History. She said, life's challenges are not supposed to paralyze you. They're not supposed to paralyze you. They're supposed to help you discover who you are. I've said this to kids throughout my career. This is a challenge. These help you decide who you are. This challenge, focused on West Hartford, will help us decide who we are as a community. What are we going forward? What will we demand? I believe in this community. I live here. I have 2 kids in school here. I believe in our teachers. I believe in our administrators. And I believe in our kids, and I believe in our families. I believe in this board, and I believe in the town council. But now it's up to you, the people, to decide and give input. So, next steps. Oh, there's a lot of meetings. Our legislative delegation forum, March 9th, the legislators from the state, that's this Thursday, will be at Charter Oak School at 7 o'clock. They'll be hearing your input on what the state budget should look like. Then, budget workshop number 1, as we said, March 15th, where we will focus on just the recommended budget, not any proposed reductions at that meeting. The 21st will be when we look at proposed reductions. And I would say at workshops, the first workshop, there is no opportunity for public comment. The second workshop, there could be, but it's because it's a meeting will be gavelled in and then gavelled out almost immediately, but there will be opportunity there. But there will be the Town Council and Board of Education members from both groups will be meeting at Charter Oak at 6 p.m. on March 23rd to hear input from the community. I expect, based on the turnout tonight, we might have to put in money for an addition to Charter Oak for that night. That's a bad joke right now. Sorry. But hopefully people will turn out and people will hear from everyone in this community. Then a board public hearing, March 29th, where we hear the input of our community. And then we talk about what we're going to put forward. And then on April 4th, I would imagine our budget adoption will go through where we will vote item by item. And none of those lists, because as I said, they're public now. None of those lists are complete, like that's the only proposal. More proposals that come in, I'll price out those proposals. And in addition to that, it's not, if I say raise classes by 2.2, you could choose to raise classes by 1.1, you could choose to raise classes by 3.3. Those are all shifts you can make. That's just kind of what we came up with. And so that night's April 4th. And then 3 weeks later, the town council will adopt their town budget, which will include, they will think about the revenues and the expenditures and what can the town bear at that point. The town council doesn't adopt the Board of Education line by line. They either adopt your number or a different number and say, okay, come in with this many more in reductions or this many more in additions. Probably not the additions part. But that's what this looks like on the town side. Some people have asked, well, how can you do this without the state knowing their budget? We don't know when the state's going to know their budget. But I know that by May 1st, I have to send non-renewal notices out to non-tenured teachers by law. And on July 1st, the town has to send out tax bills. So there are communities out there that are going forward as if there will be no state cuts. That's not the way West Hartford does business. There's going to be something. And we need to have an opportunity for our town to have their say, our people to have our say. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your attention. Thank you for the work you're about to do. So,
Thanks very much, Tom. Thanks to you and to your team for all of this diligent, very, very hard, difficult work. We are certainly prepared to move ahead on this. We're not looking forward to it. Thanks again to all of you for coming. And as Tom said so eloquently, this is really an opportunity for us as a community to come together and weigh in on what our priorities are for our kids. And I should say thanks to my colleagues here on the board for what they've already done and what we will be doing. Everyone here has or has had kids in this school system and knows very well the importance of all of these numbers. As I've said before, these $166 million or 166 million promises to our kids, as I see it. So this is critical work and probably the most critical that we do. As again, you've seen the dates of opportunities to come. In addition to that, all of this information will be up on our website as our contact information, email addresses, you could send to individuals or to all of us for consideration of different ideas. As Tom also mentioned, I just want to reiterate, it bears mentioning again that this is a proposed budget. This is for us as a board to receive, to take into consideration, to debate and take in input and receive more data, to make changes and additions, et cetera, in the weeks ahead. In addition to that, with these meetings, we'll do some unpacking and deciphering of some of the questions about, contracts and special ed and out-of-district placements and class size breaks, all of these sort of mysterious things that have enormous dollar figures and, as Tom says rightly, people behind them. So we'll be sure to be as clear as possible, and if not, let us know, and we'll do our best to explain. So that said, we're going to move on. All those in favor of receiving the superintendent's recommended 2017-2018 education budget and begin the process of reviewing and modifying for final approval and adoption as the Board of Education budget at the April 4, 2017 Board of Education meeting, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, the motion is carried, so we are now in receipt of the budget. Thank you very much.
No?
Let's just, yeah. There'll be lots of time.
No, I'm good.
So that, folks, is the budget portion. We're going to move on to the normal fun part of the meeting. You're all welcome to stay, which is superintendent's report.
you just got it. That's it.
So it's more than enough, really? That's all you got? All right. Staff reports and board discussions. Move on to routine matters. I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting from February 22nd, 2017. Second? Second. Any edits, changes? I know you've received this before. Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of February 22, 2017, please say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Any information and reports from my colleagues? Please.
I just want to say on a slightly lighter note that I went to the chocolate cafe where I thought the chocolate would be the highlight, being the chocoholic that I am. But I have to say that the music was the highlight. It is extraordinary how gifted not only our students are, but the conductors and musicians are that teach them. I I was really, really moved by how beautifully they played. That's it.
Nice. You got it. All right.
Usually we're just talking about
it's
three
just
people
about
in the audience.
basketball,
So. And the group up here knows I'm a little biased, and I don't want to steal too much thunder, but for the girls won the CCC district at Hall, the varsity girls basketball, and they went to state, were ranked 7th in the state, went to a second game in the States and lost to Southington by 3 in the last 6 seconds. So they've, I think, had more wins this year than they have in 3 previous years. So, and I think the boys are in it right now too for Hall. So I guess you could tell what side of the town I'm on.
Anyone else? Over to our student representatives.
So, going off of sports, the boys basketball team plays tomorrow. They're playing Weaver in the second round of states. And hockey won in an overtime sudden death game yesterday. So they are going to the second round of states also. Boys swimming state starts on Saturday. And Pops and Jazz opens this weekend and also next week as well. And you can buy your tickets online. It's assigned seating. Or you can go to the box office at Hall. It's a really awesome show. Everyone's been working so hard. All the musicians, all of the singer, well, everyone's a musician, and all the dancers. So I would really be awesome if you guys would all go. And that's all.
So on the other side of town, we have a pretty similar event to Pops and Jazz, except that we do our musical. So this year it's Cinderella, and that will also be opening this weekend and will continue into next weekend as well. The same sort of deal. You can buy your tickets online. You can also buy your tickets at the box office. And so we have the people performing, but we also have our pit orchestra, which has been putting in a lot of hours during the prep season of this musical. So going off the sports theme that's sort of happening right now, the boys hockey senior night was last Wednesday, and there was a great showing of Conard students. Also, last week, many students participated and attended a Black History Day held in room 169 at Conard, which was full of lectures, presentations, and guest speakers, and I've heard really positive reviews from it. Also, tomorrow is International Women's Day, and at Conard, women and allies will join together to make a day without a woman, which is supposed to recognize the enormous value that women of all backgrounds have placed on our socioeconomic system. And finally, the Multicultural Club will be holding their annual dinner, Night Around the World, on Friday, March 31st, and this will be an event celebrating diversity through food, performances, and an international fashion show. Thank you.
Thank you. Future business, we've already outlined it very in careful detail, the upcoming dates for discussion and public input. So those are in the handout and online again through the month and into April. Any requests for future agenda items? Do we have enough on our plate? Yes. Comments from visitors. Would anyone like to address the board now, or you want to have some time to digest before? You're welcome to it, though. Please, Mr. Joyce, please state your name and your address, and as you well know, we have 3 minutes to address the board. Thank you.
Do I have to turn this on? No, I don't have to turn it on. Okay. John Joyce, 170 South Main Street. Well, this is obviously a critical budget cycle, and I'm hoping that if we do send in a question or a concern to you, that to the board, that we could get responses from each board member. I know in the past some boards have channeled those to one response, but I think this budget cycle is so critical. I think it'd be important to hear from all of you, and also to hear from you about your differing opinions about these proposals. Would be, I think, important to the town to see, where things are settling before the final vote. So other people can have pertinent input to that process. And I'm sorry I'm asking you to do more. I know you do a lot already, so thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. Would anyone else like to address the board? No one else? All right. We have no executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn? Second? All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.